10 common English mistakes you're probably making and how to fix them. Hey everyone! Welcome back to Bright English, your go-to place for learning English. In today's video, we're going to cover 10 of the most common mistakes English learners make. And more importantly, how to fix them. So, if you've ever felt confused or frustrated by English grammar, pronunciation, or vocabulary, this video is for you. Let's kick things off with one of the trickiest little words, the. This tiny word causes a lot of confusion for learners. Often people use the when they don't need to, or forget to use it when they should. For example, many learners say, I live in the London, which is actually incorrect. The correct sentence is, I live in London. We don't use the with city names, most countries, or general places. But we do use it with some specific names, like the United States, the United Kingdom, or the Netherlands. More examples. Incorrect. I went to the school yesterday. Correct. I went to school yesterday. We use the with specific institutions, such as the hospital, but we drop it when we mean the activity. Go to school. Go to work. Simple, right? 2. Now let's look at another area that causes a lot of confusion. Prepositions. Have you ever been unsure whether to use in or on? Let's fix that. These prepositions sound simple, but they're super easy to mix up. For example, you might say, I'll meet you on the car. But that's incorrect. It should be, I'll meet you in the car, because in is used for enclosed spaces. You're inside the car. Clear explanation. In is used when you're talking about enclosed or confined spaces, like in a room, in a city, or in a car. On is for surfaces, on the table, on the bus, or on a page. Extra examples. You sit on a chair, but in a chair if it's a big comfy one. You travel on a plane or bus, but sit in a car. Make sense? 3. Now that you're an expert on prepositions, let's move to something that even native speakers struggle with. Silent letters. English has lots of silent letters, and they can really trip you up. The trick is to know when to just ignore them. For example, in the word listen, the T is silent, so it's pronounced listen, not listen. Another classic example is island. Even though there's ands, you don't pronounce it. So it's island, not island. Additional common examples. Night. Don't pronounce the K, just say night. Half, ignore the L, and say half. By learning these common words, you can make your pronunciation sound much more natural. Next up, let's talk about something you definitely see in written English. Forgetting to add that tiny littles when talking about he, she, or it. You need to adds to the verb. For example, we say, she goes to school, but many learners might say, she go to school. The key here is remembering that when you talk about he, she, or it, you need to add these at the end of the verb. This rule applies to most verbs, but watch out for exceptions like do and have, which change to does and has instead. Okay, now let's move on to something that confuses a lot of learners, using to and every correctly. Here's a quick one. Do you say, I'm too happy, or I'm very happy? A lot of learners mix these up, but they mean different things. Well, too is used for something that's more than necessary. For example, too hot means the heat is more than you want. But if you're simply expressing a strong emotion, use very. So you should say, I'm very happy, not too happy. Too means more than enough. It's often negative, like too much homework or too hot. But every is neutral or positive. It just makes something stronger, like every happy or every good. So next time, remember, too is when it's too much, and every just makes it bigger or better. Next, we're tackling irregular verbs. These can be a real headache, but I've got a trick to help. Irregular verbs don't follow the usual add-ed rule for the past tense, and many learners struggle with this. A classic mistake is saying, yesterday I go to the park. But go is an irregular verb, so it changes to went. It doesn't follow the regular pattern. Quick list of common irregular verbs. Go becomes went. See becomes saw. Eat becomes ate. The best way to master irregular verbs is to memorize the most common ones and practice them. Now let's talk about two little words that can cause a big mix-up. Much and many. Much and many seem similar, but they have different uses. Use many for things you can count, like friends or books, and much for uncountable things, like water or money. The rule is simple. Use many with things you can count, like friends or apples. Use much with uncountable things, like water or money. It's an easy fix once you remember the rule. Countable equals many, uncountable equals much. Now, let's clear up the difference between ints and for. These words are used with time, but in different ways. Have you ever said, I've lived here since 5 years? The correct phrase is, I've lived here for 5 years. Since is used for a specific point in time, like a date or a starting point, while for is used to indicate a duration or length of time. Let's now move on to another area where learners often trip up. Using the wrong word order in questions instead of saying, you are coming with us? The correct way is to say, are you coming with us? In questions, the verb should come before the subject. Finally, let's wrap things up with a mistake that many learners make when it comes to overuse very. Do you find yourself saying very, very often? Instead of saying, that's very, very interesting, you can use stronger words like fascinating or amazing. It makes your English sound more natural and expressive. And that's a wrap. We've gone over 10 common mistakes that English learners make and how to avoid them. Remember, making mistakes is a part of the learning process, so don't be too hard on yourself. What's important is to learn and improve. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Bright English for more English learning tips. Comment below on which mistake you found the most surprising, or let us know your favorite tip from today. Thanks for watching, and see you next time on Bright English.